Alright guys, welcome back to another Reaper tutorial. It's been a while since the last one, and I've gotten a new mic since then, so I've been playing around with settings, learning new things, and I've decided to show you those things, because they're great. So we're going to be doing Reaper, obviously, so give that a download. We're going to be using VB audio cable to route our audio out to OBS and Discord, etc. But that's going to be at the end of the video. But get that installed. When you first launch Reaper, it's going to ask you to set up your audio devices. So what you want to set it up as is WAS API in shared mode for now. Your input device, you want to use your microphone, obviously. Your output device is, in the beginning now, going to be our headphones. And that's up here in Reaper. But if I click on this, it's going to mute me. So once you get your Reaper set up so you can hear yourself, you're going to need to add a track to your project file. So right click, insert new track. It's going to default to input 1. So if your mic's plugged in input 1, nothing you need to do here. If you're plugged into input 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, change it to your correct input. You want it set on mono as well. So I'm using input 2. And now I'm going to arm my track so it starts monitoring. Or so it starts getting input. I can't hear myself yet though out of this channel because I'm not monitoring it. So click this button right here, record monitoring. And so I've turned off my processed mic, and now we're hearing my dry mic. No processing going into it. And yeah, this is a dynamic microphone. My previous videos were done on a AT2020, which is a condenser microphone. So the background noise is drastically different. This is an AT BP40, which is a large diaphragm dynamic broadcast microphone. My gain is cranked on my interface right now because it requires way more gain to be powered. But talking about levels and gain, when setting your gain for recording, you want to aim for having a peak volume of around -6. If it goes up or down, whatever, that's fine. You can see here, if you click on it, it resets your peak point. And so the loudest part of my voice, you can see I'm kind of getting really loud here, -5. So try to aim for around -6. Where you put your mic definitely makes a difference. There's the Goldilocks zone for your mic. And you want your average volume, which is right here, to be roughly -18 to -12. This is to get the loudest signal you can out of your mic with leaving you still some headroom to get wild with your voice or yell a little bit. Because if your gain is too high, your background noise is going to be insanely loud. And you may start peaking your mic if you get way too loud. Or sorry, clipping your mic. So you got to get your levels relatively loud just to make the entire process easier. So again, I'm picking around -8 with an average of -18 to -12. So let's go ahead and start adding our effects onto here. So the first thing we're going to add is a downward expander. An expander reduces volumes below the threshold, and a compressor reduces volumes above the threshold. Both do so at a ratio of whatever you choose. So a 5-to-1 ratio, a sound needs to increase 5 decibels for it to output 1 decibel. So I'm going to monitor my background noise without making any other noises here. I'm going to click this up here. I'm going to try to get my peak noise volume. So you can see I have a noise floor around -50, which is pretty good. If it gets any higher than that, you're going to start having a really hard time reducing your noise. So let's go ahead and set this to -50. And now let's start turning up our ratio to reduce audio below the threshold. So immediately you can tell that my background noise is gone, but my voice has gone to shit. So there's a few things we need to change here. One, our detection needs to be set to RMS, so it works off average volume, not peak volumes. But you'll notice that I still sound kind of weird, and that's because my attack time is by default 30 milliseconds, which is way too long. The attack time in this case for an expander is how quickly it turns off when I start talking. And then the release time is how quickly or how slowly it turns back on. So if I have a fast attack, it turns off quickly, allowing my voice to come in properly. And if I have a longer release, it doesn't clamp back up, messing with my voice. If I have a really short release, it's going to start like chopping up my voice a little bit, because it's at the very end of my voice, it's starting, or at my words, it's starting to cut them off. So fast attack, long release. And that's the premise of an expander. Just reduce levels below the threshold. In this case, I chose 5-to-1. And then fast attack, long release. Immediately, no background noise. I wish I could just leave it at this, but I kind of sound like doo-doo right now. So let's keep going forward. So next, we're going to add a compressor. Now, it may seem weird that we're expanding and then compressing immediately, but it'll make more sense in a second. So we know that my average volume is roughly -18 to -12. And coming out of the expander, same thing. I'm peaking at around -9, -8. So keep that number in mind. Look at your peak volume coming out of the expander, because that's where you want your output to be after compression. So again, -18 is my average, roughly. So if I drop myself down to -18, I want to work on the peaks. I don't want to blow people's ears out when I yell into the microphone or makes just drastic volume changes. So because I'm working with peaks, I don't want an RMS compressor. So by default, Recomp uses RMS, so it averages out volume changes. So if you turn this to 0, it's now a peak compressor. You'll see my inputs are now jumping up much quicker than it was before, but I'm not doing any compression yet. For peak compression, you want to use a somewhat high ratio, something like 5 to 6 to 1. And so now when I talk really loudly, you'll see it went up to like -4 there. But it's still averaging like -3, -2-ish. Only a little bit of gain reduction is happening when I'm talking. And this is good. There's not too much compression going on. If I was to lower my threshold, it would start gain reducing more of my words, and that's not something I want. It will start to sound really, really weird. But there is reasons to do that, but you wouldn't do it at such a high ratio, like 6 to 1. You would reduce your ratio down to like 2 to 1 and then bring your threshold down. And so this is just to have a very, very consistent level coming out. But in this case, I don't want to do that. I just want to catch my peaks because my input's already loud enough. So I'm going to work at -18 and have a high ratio. So I'm just gain reducing the louder parts of my voice. So again, if you look at the expander, we determined it was roughly -8 peak-ish. But now if you look at my output on a regular speaking volume, I'm around -11 now. So I'm going to +3 to bring myself up a little bit here. And now my output is peaking at -8. So input is now equal to output. So that's compressors. There's still a few more settings in here that I need to go over. You have pre-compression, which delays your audio source. Actually, technically it doubles your audio source, sets it back in time, and uses it as the input to determine whether or not a compressor should kick in. But in the case of live audio, having pre-compression means you have to delay your signal, and any delay you add to your signal will start to desync your voice from your webcam. So we're going to have 0 pre-compression. Attack is how quickly the compressor grabs onto the signal and starts gain reducing once you reach over the threshold. Release time, in the case of vocals, you can use auto release. And so it determines when to turn the compressor off. If you want to get really precise, you can put it on, say, 40 milliseconds, and that should give you a good result for vocals. But auto release works just as well. Knee size, if you imagine a straight line, well, why imagine it when you can draw it? So this is 1-to-1 compression. Oops, sorry. Imagine this is 1-to-1 compression. Here's your threshold. Here's your ratio. So as you bring your ratio up, volume changes get gain reduced at a ratio of whatever you choose, 6 to 1, 2 to 1, whatever. Infinity to 1 is 1 as well. Either way, this is called a knee. So the knee size rounds this out. Instead of it being a hard knee like that, it kind of Bezier curves it, if you will, to round out the gain reduction at the threshold. So if you add a few decibels of gain reduction or knee size, it's going to sound a little bit more natural right around the threshold when the compressor kicks in. So that's compression in a nutshell. I still want to increase my output a little bit. I still find I'm not that loud, but if I was to increase the gain anymore on my interface, I would start clipping my microphone. So we're going to add a limiter. And in this case, we're going to use the MGA JS limiter. So you have threshold, which we'll touch in a second. Ceiling is how loud you can possibly be. 0 decibels, anything above 0 will start to clip. 0 decibels is insanely loud. -3 is pretty damn loud. -5 is a good ballpark. So really, all I'm doing is going to boost my levels up from -6 peak to -3 peak. So if I drop this down to my original peak level of -6, you'll notice that I'm much louder now. My dynamic range has been reduced even further because a limiter technically is a compressor. If I'm finding I'm coming out a little bit too loud, I can change my threshold a little bit here, say like -4. So you can see my peak here is -11. Let's reset these. So going in -10, going out -7. So it's doing a little bit of gain boosting, but not too much. Not so much to add a lot of noise to your signal. So you can see there's a little bit of background noise still kind of staking in through the expander, and it definitely doesn't cover my keyboard just yet, as you can hear. So we're going to add a gate, and I'm going to actually change this around how I usually do. So I'm going to add the gate to be after the compressor. But before the limiter. So a gate shuts off the audio signal when it drops below the threshold. A gate is an expander, but it's an expander with an infinite ratio. So you can hear a tiny bit of background noise if I turn this up. To say, let's say -36. Now, the quality of my voice has changed slightly here. So we're going to have to do some tweaking, if you will. So for a gate, attack time is a volume fade in. So if I crank up my attack time here, when I speak, the volume fades in as I pass the threshold. The hold time is how long the gate stays open once it passes the threshold. You'll notice I'm getting kind of cut off on my words right now. So I'm going to crank this up. I use around 300 milliseconds for me. That's just kind of what works. And release time in our case is a volume fade out, but because I don't have any background noise, normally if I didn't have this expander, the release time, you can hear it fades out my background noise. If I increase my release time, fade out. But the expander is already doing that for us, so we don't actually need a long release time to get the sound we need. Hysteresis. On other gates, this is known as the open and close. Open and close difference threshold. So at 0, my gate right now is opening and closing at minus 36 decibels. If I put this at minus 2, my gate will open at minus 36 and close at minus 38. So right now, it's already done a good job at knocking out the weird background noise that was kind of fluttering my expander. But if I start mashing on my keys here, you're going to notice it starts opening up the gate. So in REAPER, for regate, you can actually set up a bandpass filter. And that's using both the high pass and low pass filter to filter out frequencies that you don't want to open the gate. So if I bang my desk, you can hear that opening up the gate. So a high pass filter cuts off frequencies below whatever hertz you set. So let's say 300 in this case. Now when I bang my desk, you can see the threshold going up, but it's not opening up the gate anymore because it's now rejecting low frequencies. For your keyboard, those are high frequencies. So if you bring down your low pass filter, it's going to cut off frequencies above the hertz. Your mileage may vary on what hertz works for you. If you drop this too low, here, I'll give you an example. Preview filter output will show you or let you hear what the gate is hearing. So if I turn this on, you can hear I'm kind of, sounds like I'm in a radio. If I keep bringing this down, the frequencies the gate can hear are starting to get reduced even more and more and more and more and more. But certain words come in at different frequencies. So F's and S's and T's. If you drop this too low, S's are roughly around 4,000 hertz. So it's going to be harder for the gate to open up with certain words. So you need to play around with your low pass and high pass, but I found that roughly 300 to 8,000 it's not opening it up as much. And so we talked about on the compressor, RMS size. If you turn off RMS size, it becomes a peak compressor. Right now, the gate is set up to be a peak gate. If I increase the RMS size, though, it becomes a RMS gate. So now it averages out the volume changes to make the input detector less sensitive. So now if I start typing on my keys, you'll see my thresholds going up and down, but typing on my keyboard rarely opens it up. So if you're finding, like right there, when I said so, the gate is drastically popping open, and that is your attack size. Right now I have a really fast attack. If I increase my attack to say like 75, it's now fading in a lot better. It's not popping in those S's and such. But there is a point where it may be difficult for the gate to open up with certain words. So you got to play with your threshold, your attack time. And if you're still having some issues, you can increase your dry volume. And this is going to let some of the original signal back in. So now when I start typing, so it's letting a little bit of the signal in. So when I start speaking, the beginning of words will start coming in a little bit more easy. The gate is the hardest part of the chain to set up because getting it right takes a lot of tweaking with these three values and the threshold. If you set the threshold too high, or sorry, too low, your keyboard's going to open it up. If you set it up too high, though, it's going to have difficulty opening up with your regular speaking volume. So it's definitely a balance in trying to find what sounds good. I settled for minus 36 for my mic. And really that covers the majority of this video. What remains is EQing, but that is so individual for every single mic that going over it would take forever. So I'm going to copy over my EQ from my original and toss it in there. So you can hear what my EQ is doing. What it has done is reduce some of the muddiness that's happening in this frequency range of 350 roughly. Giving me a small boost in the mid-range. It's dropping some gain in the sibilants. That's the S's and S sounds. I'm dropping that down a little bit here, and then I'm boosting my high levels up a little bit. And then I have a low pass filter, just cutting off everything above 16,000. If your microphone has a high pass filter, or your mixer has a high pass filter, you're going to want to turn that on if you're doing vocals. I'll show you why. So this is with the high pass filter turned off. You're going to notice that my low frequencies have they're really starting to just muddy up my signal. If you don't have a high pass filter, you need to apply a high pass filter around 100 hertz and boost or lower the bandwidth so it's not boosting too much of your low end. Adjust it slightly so you can get it back, say minus 80. A lot of mics are set up for 80 hertz high pass filter. I believe my mic is 100 hertz. So I'm going to turn this off and turn my high pass back on. So I have my final output. So this is the fully processed mic. And now we need to move this signal to be outputted to OBS or Discord and all that. So if you have installed VB Audio Virtual Cable in your playback and recording devices, you'll have a cable output in recording and a cable input on playback. Set your hertz to 48,000. Double check your interface as well. 48,000. Playback. Oh, sorry. 48,000. And cable input. Make sure all your sample rates are matching. And I'll explain why in a second. So you can see here, our project was already set up as 48 kilohertz. And in OBS, I'm also set up at 48 kilohertz. The reason for this is so there's no resampling going on. You're not spending any cycles on resampling your audio. Everything's the same hertz going in and out of Reaper. Once you start resampling, there's a higher chance that you're going to run into audio artifacts. If you get any popping or clicking, anything like that, it could be your sample rates either mismatched or your latency for your audio devices is too low. So everything ties together when it comes to your sample rate and in-project samples. So let's go ahead and switch this out to be our cable so it goes out to OBS. Click on your audio devices up here. I will be muted during this, so pay attention. So what I've done is switched it so now my virtual cable is receiving the audio. If I go into OBS, you'll see my input now is coming in through the mic and my desktop audio, which I don't have any going right now. There you go, coming in through desktop. My latency is 11 milliseconds, which is pretty good. All my plugins were 0 latency latency. And when you're working real time, you want to have as little delay as possible. 11 milliseconds is pretty damn good. If you're still finding you're getting pops and clicks, you might not at all. I might not have clicked at all during this entire video. You can increase your samples, or you can decrease your sample rate. Both can have an impact on audio stability. And really, that's it. Make sure your default recording device is set up as cable output. That way, Discord has it as an input device. All your games have it as an input device. Everything will now use your virtual audio cable for mic input. So all games, all VoIP, everything. And yeah, that's it. So the last thing you'll want to do is start recording one of your games. Start recording with, say, music playing in the background, and test out your mic level to see how loud you're coming out over top of music, over top of gain volume. And game on. Hope you guys learned something with this video. It's been a while since I've done a long tutorial like this. I'm certainly not an audio engineer, so my process may not have been exact. You can definitely put your gate before the compressor. That's actually standard. But I found for me, putting the gate after the compressor produced better results. That's all I got. Until next time.